West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Welcome everyone to the room that is West Hill today. My name is John McKechnie and I am welcoming you from Linlithgow, Scotland. So a warm welcome to all of you, whether you are in the hall or whether you're online based in Ontario, across Canada, the US, the UK, Africa or beyond. All are welcome. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today. We hope that whether you are a long-time member or whether you're here for the first or only the second or third time, we hope you enjoy your time with us today. Today, the theme is focused on our series, Love and Be Loved. And the question we're asking today is when? I was thinking about this during the week and how I might answer that question. And I thought, well, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? The answer's in the question, especially when you ask it the other way around. When is it not the time to love and be loved? Of course, we know what we mean by now. It's in the present. And thinking about this, I was reminded of a song that I've often heard, and I was introduced to it visiting family in Canada. It's by Jason Mraz, a US singer-songwriter who wrote and sang a song with the title Living in the Moment. It's said he was inspired to write because of his yoga practice. If you know anything about yoga, there's a focus on paying attention to your breathing, holding back on the thoughts that are rushing through your mind and counting on the in-breaths and counting out the out-breaths. But back to the song. A verse says this, I can't walk facing backwards. I have tried. I tried more than once just to make sure. And I was denied the future I was searching for. I spun around and hurt no more. It's poetry, but it's true. It's very hard to live in the present moment or be present when the past is crowding us. Facing forward means intentionally living in the moment, in this present moment. So welcome to this present moment with us at West Hill. Just now moving on to our land acknowledgement. West Hill United is located in Treaty 20 and in the area of the Williams Treaties of 1923. These are the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and were previously occupied by the Seneca and Huron-Wendat First Nations. It's important to us here at West Hill that we commit to supporting true reconciliation in the present by honouring the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission from 2015. Regrettably, few of which actions have been completed to date. We invite you to visit the Yellowhead Institute website, an Indigenous-led research and education centre at Toronto Metropolitan University. This university plays an important role in holding governments accountable, advocating for the rights of Indigenous peoples, and developing models of change that support Indigenous futures. So if you want to do that, it's yellowheadinstitute.org. The reading today is an extract from a book by Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen Covey was an American educator, author, businessman, and speaker. His most popular book is the one I've just mentioned, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Covey earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Utah, an MBA from Harvard Business School, and a Doctor of Religious Education from Brigham Young University. He was heavily influenced by Peter Drucker and Carl Rogers. Another key influence on his thinking was his study of self-help books that he did for his doctoral dissertation. A further influence was his affiliation with the Latter-day Saints Church. And according to some, the 7 Habits was a secular distillation of Latter-day Saint values. At the end of the reading, it's customary for us to say, in this offered as wisdom for the journey, and you're invited, should you wish to do so, to join me in saying, may we walk in its light. So the reading from Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Each part of your life, today's behavior, tomorrow's behavior, next week's behavior, next month's behavior, can be examined in the context of the whole, of what really matters most to you. By keeping that end clearly in mind, you can make certain that whatever you do on any particular day does not violate the criteria you have defined as supremely important, and that each day of your life contributes in a meaningful way to the vision you have of your life as a whole. To begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of your destination. It means to know where you're going so that you better understand where you are now, and so that the steps you take are always in the right direction. It's incredibly easy to get caught up in an activity trap, in the busyness of life, to work harder and harder at climbing the ladder of success, only to discover it's leaning against the wrong wall. It's possible to be busy, very busy, without being very effective. People often find themselves achieving victories that are empty, successes that have come at the expense of things they suddenly realize were far more valuable to them. People from every walk of life, doctors, academicians, actors, politicians, business professionals, athletes, and plumbers often struggle to achieve a higher income, more recognition of a certain degree of professional competence, only to find that their drive to achieve their goal blinded them to the things that really mattered most and now are gone. How different our lives are when we really know what is deeply important to us. And keeping that picture in mind, we manage ourselves each day to be and to do what really matters most. If the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster. We may be very busy, we may be very efficient, but we will also be truly effective only when we begin with the end in mind. Offered as wisdom for the journey.
May we walk in its light.
Good morning, everybody. I want to start out this perspective with a story. So if you're ready for story time, I'm sorry I don't have popcorn or anything like that to pass out. The story goes like this. Years ago, I was a family minister, and we did this thing called a lock-in. Does anybody know what a lock-in is? If I say that term, raise your hand if you know what that is. I will explain. I don't see any hands. It's this wild idea where you take a lot of teenagers and you have them there at your facility. So for us as our church, and you start it at night, and then you go throughout the night and you have lots of different games planned and activities, and you try to stay up all night. And for some reason, people have thought this is a good idea. So I did one with a lot of youth years ago, and we had a lot of college-age students who are volunteers because some of the older people didn't want to stay up all night. And so we had, it was after a football game, and we had all these activities planned. And the youth, they did a pretty good job of staying up all through the night. And right before breakfast, I asked some of our different leaders if they would go throughout the building, and if they would get the youth and they would ask them to meet outside in about 10 minutes. I went on outside and I watched the youth come out of the building and the leaders. And I still remember a lot of them, they had blankets around them, and they were, well, what are you doing? Now, for the record, this was like the end of summer, beginning of fall. It wasn't in the winter, and it wasn't like super cold. It wasn't putting them at danger. They just had like, this look of concern on their face. What's going on? And as they began to come out, I asked them to sit on a hill, this little hill that was behind the building. And here's the hill. And then I was right here facing them. And behind me was just a big open field. And as they sat down, I began to ask them different trivia questions. And I'm going to bring up some of them here. I have a couple of them here. I began to ask some questions such as, how long each day do you think the average person is in front of a screen? That could be TV. That could be on their phone. You name it. And so I'm going to ask if you have a guess. Now, I re-looked up the statistics because they changed. It's actually become more since I asked this years ago. So my question is for you: the average Canadian spends how many hours a day in front of a screen? Take a guess. Just throw it out. Say it out loud if you want. All right. So here's the answer. The average Canadian spends 11 hours a day in front of a screen. Isn't that wild? Now, I remember years ago when I said this to youth, and now this is for someone from the U.S. I think at that time it was around 7 or 8 hours. And then I began to ask some more questions. I'll do another one here. How many minutes a day do you think the average Canadian spends in traffic? Now, remember, this just isn't Toronto. This is all over Canada. So how many minutes a day do you think the average Canadian spends in traffic? The answer is 60 to 75 minutes daily. I'll do one more. The average Canadian spends this amount of hours working over the course of their life. And so this isn't just like, doing stuff around the house or working on the car. This is, hours at work is how they measured this. So throw it out loud if you want. So hours over their whole life, not just per day, is 90,000 hours. So then as the youth, as I was doing this trivia, I would also then give them some different numbers. So the 11 hours in front of a screen each day, that equals out on average to just a little bit over 37 years of somebody's life that they will now spend looking at a screen. In traffic, 60 to 75 minutes a day on average. That's about 3 to 4 years. And then the 90,000 hours over the course of a lifespan, it's a little bit over 10 years. And I kept on asking these questions, and I felt like they're, looking at me like, all right, did you bring us outside to just ask us trivia? We could, be playing games or try to get a little nap in because breakfast is starting here soon. I was trying to time something. As I asked these trivia questions, something started to happen behind me. The sun began to rise. And when I first saw it, I turned and I said, "You see that right there? The sunrise. It's been happening every day of your life, whether you've seen it or not. And if you are lucky, if you are fortunate, on average, you will get about 30,000 of those." That might seem like a lot, especially to a teenager. But when you think about it, it can go quickly. And I'm sure many of us can attest to that. And my point wasn't to say, oh, use all your time wisely, but to appreciate it, have a gratitude for it. And I used a verse from the Old Testament at that time, and I said, in Psalms chapter 90, it says, "Teach me to number my days so that I may gain a heart of wisdom. Let me know that life is finite so that I live it the way that I need to." I wanted to do something that stood out to them. I had so many memories of my father growing up when I was younger, of trying to do things that were just these special moments. And I know that my dad's intention was to try to teach me something that would stick out, maybe not every day, but just at these different times throughout life. And I do think of some of those things occasionally. And so my hope was to try to do something out of the ordinary for those teenagers, that they would maybe at different times of their life look back and say, remember when we all watched the sunset together? And I was told to appreciate each and every day that I have. I don't know if any of them really still remember it, to be honest. However, I will say there was one teenager. His mom approached me a couple months later and she said, my son, he's been trying to watch the sunrise every day as a reminder that it's precious, that to enjoy, to remember to live life with intention. And I'm guessing he still doesn't do that. I mean, that's a big ask of a teenager. Now he's an adult. But that really meant a lot to me. We've been going through this series together with this main aim that we want to, that I think is a huge part of life, to love and to be loved. And of course, we can say it in different ways, to be guided by love, to love with all that we can, to live a life of love. However you want to phrase it. I phrase it to love and to be loved, to have that reminder of both. But we've wanted to go from this abstract idea, this thing where it sounds like a Hallmark thing, oh, love and be loved. It sounds like something that would look nice in a card, right? Or some nice saying on the wall. We've wanted to take it from abstract to something real. And that's why I've given these different questions to give it some teeth, to not just say, oh, love and be loved, but to say, how can I love and be loved? Where can I love and be loved? Which ways? With courage, with compassion, with gratitude, with wisdom? And I could go through all the questions, but this question that we look at this morning, when? It takes it from the clouds and it puts it on the calendar. It takes it from the shelf of just something sitting there, looking nice, but maybe collecting dust. And it encourages it to become a part of our everyday life and the nitty gritty and the here and now and the every moment. It's one of the most important questions. It's not something that we should put off of how we can love and be loved. It's not something that we should wait for the next sunrise or 10 sunrises from now. It's something that we should aim for every day. And the question of when, I think, is of utmost importance. Now, here's my strategy of going through this and putting this into action. John read from Stephen Covey there at the beginning, and I apologize. I chose that quote, and it was a very long quote. However, I hope that you picked up from it. To start with the end in mind. That's the main idea. I've been using this theory of goal setting theory. And goal setting theory, as well as a couple months ago, we talked about the theory of hope. And hope theory says, number one, to have meaningful, healthy goals. And then goal setting theory, to build on that, it says to gain clarity. And so when we start with the end in mind, it helps us gain clarity because we can look at what we really want and I would say need out of life. I often find where they can trip up is taking short-term wins at the expense of long-term sustainability and long-term health. I mean, think about, even on a larger scale, I don't talk about politics as much, but think about, politics or people in power. And what's the story that we hear? It's people taking these short-term wins because they think that it will be the best. But how does history look upon those who have chosen that way? Not fondly. We want to live a life with great meaning. I think that we have to start with the bigger picture. Now, as John reminded us at the beginning, it doesn't mean that we just live in the future because that can cause anxiety. We only have this current moment. That's the only guarantee that we have. But in this current moment, when we have an orientation, an outlook of the future of who we are becoming, that's vital, is what the research shows. I think about it this way. I enjoy playing piano. However, I am mediocre at it. I do okay. Now, next to someone like Scott, not even in the same conversation. When I was in high school, I was so fortunate. I started going to this high school. I transferred to this high school. In the state of Kansas, there was only one of two high schools at that time that had a piano department. I mean, they had a whole wing of the high school that had piano practice rooms in it, a full-time piano teacher that was dedicated to that program. And so I got to take lessons for free. And it was so good to me. And I had piano, third period, and then the period after that, fourth period, I had choir. And my piano teacher began to ask me, she began to say, hey, what if you played for the choir? Normally she would play and try to direct the choir. And she said, well, what if you played? I said, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm not the best at sight reading. And she said, well, you have this period right before choir. You could be working on it. I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. And to be honest, I was scared out of my mind. I mean, I wanted to hit all the right notes and have the right timing. I mean, if I mess up, the whole choir messes up. Well, what I did is I would get to know the song. She would play it for me. I would listen to a recording. I would see the bigger picture. And then I would just break it down. Each verse, the chorus, the refrain, one page, and in fact, one line at a time, one note. Sometimes I would spend like a whole week just on one line getting that right. What's interesting, what I find interesting is I would play it, the different things for the choir occasionally. And afterwards, I'd have people come up to me and they say, wow, you're so good at playing piano. The honest truth was, not to belittle myself, I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't amazing. I was just a teenager. But because I could break it down page by page, line by line, note by note, but I started with the end in sight. So what that means to me in my practical life, I don't look at breaking it down, starting with the end in sight as like something that's on a spreadsheet. Oh, you got to have this down. You got to have this year down and this month down, and then everything will flow, right? I look at it as a song. I want to enjoy the music of life. I want to be in alignment. I want to be able to dance with the rhythm of life. And so knowing what this song is, getting acquainted to what I need my song to be. And that's the question for all of us, right? That's the question for us as a community as we go into this time of Vision Works. What do we want our song to be? What's the bigger picture? That's why we go over the values, because that's so important. We have to keep that in sight. Trust me, there are things that come up on the weekly, different things that could happen. But you know what? When we have our eye on what's most important, because it's about priorities, it's about what we care about most. When we keep our eye on that, those little things don't bother us as much. When we play a note just slightly wrong, it's all right. We know the larger page or the larger song that we're playing. And so then I break down, for me, I look at it, what do I want for my life overall? But then I look at, what about this year? What do I need? What values do I need to really express this year? I can have overall larger values, but what values this year, this month? Maybe this month I need more courage. Maybe this week I need to have a little bit more rest, Those can change a little bit. The overall questions, where, what, the other questions, how. Maybe overall in my life, I realize that there's these things I need to do, but then for this year and this month, I can dig a little bit more deeper and have a better understanding. And so for me, I've talked about my journal, and not everybody, of course, has to do this. I will take my page of, my aims for my life, the answers to these questions. And then I'll have, this year and then this month, and I'll line it up so I can try to be in alignment. And then eventually, the question of when, right here, right now, where it lives. To enjoy, appreciate, to be in alignment with what matters most, with how we need to live. I think it was Abraham Maslow who said, we self-actualize moment by moment, but it's choosing to live into who we feel that we need to be each and every moment. That question of when is so important. Now, there's something else that this question of when has brought to my attention. Yes, it's the 30,000 sunrises. It's the live, each day as I feel that I need to, loving myself and loving others, to be in alignment with that. But another practice that I have is looking at the sunsets. And I don't have as many left as I once did, and none of us do. And I don't say this to sound sad. That's not my goal here. But when I look at a sunset, and by a sunset, I'm kind of saying this metaphorically. Sometimes I'll go for a walk at sunset time. But I have a practice of nearly every day saying, Joe, what did you get to love today? Where did you get to love today? Can you find the good? Because scientists say that 85% of our thoughts go to the negative, and that can have evolutionary benefit to protect us from things, but it can also cause pain. But that's not reality. 85% of things are not negative. And so these questions can help bring to light the good that is all around us. Who did I get to love today? Which ways did I get to love today? And so on and so forth. But it's because I choose to be intentional, which I invite you to do. If you're not, if you are, great. If not, there's no time like today. Choosing to be intentional, noticing the different rhythms that life has each day, each month, each year. Our life, choosing to be proactive and to be intentional makes a huge difference. Helps us bring us into alignment with our goals, our hopes, and who we want and need to be ultimately. For our closing time, I wrote something. And I want to read this out loud, and it might be a little bit of I might be saying some of the same things, but I really wanted to. I often think of it, you when you talk, you take off the plane, and then you have people up in the air, and you want to kind of bring them back down to the ground in a safe manner. I think of it in gymnastics. You really want to stick the landing, and so in preparation for this morning, I wrote down how I wanted to close. So I got the words right. So I want to read that. And then after I read this, I'm going to ask for Scott to come up. And after I read this, if he could play. And I'm going to ask for us to go through a reflection together that I'm going to guide. Here's what I wrote down. That morning, referring to that morning with the youth, it wasn't about a sunrise as a spectacle. It was about attention, about waking up to the life that we're actually living. The question, when can I love and be loved, is a way of pulling love out of the clouds and into real time. Not rigidly, but honestly. Our days, they're not infinite, but they can be full. And I'm adding this. That's what makes them so precious and so valuable, that they're not infinite. As the saying goes, it's not the years in your life that count, but the life in your years. I'm going to say that one more time. It's not the years in your life that count, but the life in your years. The choosing each and every sunrise, each and every day. And one of the surprising gifts of being intentional is that it doesn't just create alignment. I reason it can create gratitude. You start noticing what you normally rush past, even the smallest of things. And I'm adding a little bit to this. I try to have a practice in my life where I call it extreme gratitude. I still want to remember to be thankful sometimes. I want to remember to be thankful for the smallest of things, as little as a cup of coffee, the warmth that I'm feeling right now. So my invitation is simple. Don't only ask why it matters, or who you want to love, or where you want to practice love, or which ways you need to grow in love by wisdom, courage, compassion, or honesty, etc. Don't only ask how you want to show up, or what a loving life looks like. Ask a question that brings all of those good intentions into real time, into the right here, right now. When will I intentionally choose to love and be loved? And then work backwards from the loving life you envision to this year, to this month, to today, to the moment that we all are experiencing right now together. Scott, if you would, I'm going to ask that you play. And I'm going to ask during this time as Scott plays that you just reflect on the words that I say. And so if you're comfortable as Scott begins to play, if you would close your eyes, you don't have to. Some, they find that where they can focus a little better. So as you close your eyes, take a breath. Notice that breath. Notice the moment that we are all in. Now, if you can, picture the loving life you want to live. You don't have to be perfect and imagine, everything about it. But just try to picture what you can about this overall loving life. Take notice of what comes to mind. Whatever comes to mind, you don't have to shut it down. It's what you are thinking and feeling, and it is real to you. Think about the different people, the different places of maybe where you need to be. The moments, the things that you get to love, as simple as a warm meal. Continue thinking about that overall life. Now, we're going to work a little bit backwards together gently. This year, in alignment with that life, what needs to matter to you the most? This year, how can you best love and be loved? Consider that. Once again, you don't have to have every answer, but consider the love that you need to give to yourself. Maybe think about the ways that you need to give yourself love, whether it's through compassion or courage or greater wisdom. Think about the other people in your life and how you need to love them this year. Maybe this can be helpful. Think about one thing that you would like this year to be about in your life. It might just be one word that comes to mind. That's okay. Once again, you don't have to have all the answers. I do this all the time, and I wrestle with it on the daily. I'm constantly exploring it. Now think about this month. What feels most important? What feels most important this month? Consider again those things you thought about for your life overall or this year. How can you bring them into practice this month or maybe even this week? What would alignment look like? Once again, maybe it's loving yourself in a certain way, or loving people around you, or maybe people who aren't around you in a certain way. Maybe it's choosing to love the things that you have, or the certain places that you need to go, or environments that you need to be in, or environments that need you to be in them. I'm going to ask that Scott just keeps playing for a little bit. And I'm going to ask that we take about 30 seconds and we just sit with these thoughts and these feelings. Maybe new thoughts come to mind. Maybe it's reflecting on the thoughts that you have just considered. And now, I ask you to consider today, and not just today, but this current moment. Our guest speaker a few weeks ago, Steve Akatis, he shared a quote that said, "We're the lucky ones." Think about that. Think about what's going on in your body, the statistical improbability that we are here right now. And I ask if you can, despite the storms going on, and there's plenty. I don't want to just have toxic positivity, but if you can find the good in this moment, the fact that we are just being alive together, breathing, I ask that you choose to appreciate and love in each moment, including right now. Appreciate each moment. And remember to love and be loved. And if you want to this time, feel free to open your eyes and come back to this moment here. I've said a lot, so I'll just say one more thing. It's about this beautiful song that we get to be a part of. And learning the rhythm of it, I think, is so important. And so I encourage you today to give greater attention to that question of when and notice the difference that it makes. Thank you.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.